At the beginning of the 15th century, the Ming Emperor banned all marine trade. This would have meant the death of Quanzhou, a port wholly built around the international sea trade, but for one man. This man was permitted to mount a vast series of expeditions to explore the world. He employed all the Quanzhou craftsmen he could find to construct his long-distance fleet of over 240 ships. This was Zheng He, the greatest navigator in Chinese history.
郑和下西洋，大家都知道，它是一个官方的国家的航海行为。郑和出去以后他联络了整个的印度洋。
Zheng He, the former court eunuch, made 7 voyages over 28 years and employed over 27,000 crew. His expeditions took him up the coast of China to the north, around much of Southeast Asia, India, the Arabian Peninsula, and the east coast of Africa.
郑和下西洋的一个特别重要的就是海上达到的是西域，西域和西洋整个的重叠了，陆海丝绸之路全面的贯通，在这个时代。
Eventually, though, Zheng He's voyaging came to an end, and with it all maritime activities in Quanzhou. Before the ban on the sea trade came into force, pirates had been preying on the ships in these waters. It became essential for all traders to learn how to defend themselves. A trader was at a distinct advantage if he could fight his attacker using a martial art that the pirate didn't know. So it was that the white crane style of fighting was invented right here in Fujian province.
百方的钱，他打冲钱的时候，他是尖往外送的，但是我们咏春百二拳，它特点是尖是往里面吞的，力量是送出来，尖往里面吞的，以寸进来发挥最大的力量。
The modern sport of Yongchuan boxing has been developed following the principles of white crane style.
咏春的百二拳基本上是用手的动作比较多的，脚的比较少，但是我们脚踢了不勾腰。百方它是比较走绕的比较多，但是咏春百二拳南方这种拳呢，我们讲究子午归，就是中线、走中线，就是子午归。你不管地方在哪一个方向，我们子午就一直在这转，身体不要求是转过来转过去，都是子午归中。
White crane style is based around small movements, very suitable for use in confined spaces, such as below the decks of a ship. The wide-legged stance with flexed knees is assumed to have been useful when fighting on a swaying ship. As the Ming Dynasty drew to a close some 200 years after the imposition of the ban, its rule was weak, and it was forced to contend with foreign powers still vying for control of China's coast. Independent armed groups of merchants were taking to the seas to maintain and defend their trade.
中国的海上力量呢，我们不应该说把这个私人的把它刨在外面，只讲官方的。这个时代兴起的中国的海上力量已经是私人海上，就是私人海的贸易，成为中国海上实力的主体部分。
The most powerful of these private trading groups was run by 2 men, a father and son from Quanzhou. They were Zheng Zhilong and Zheng Chenggong.
当时呢，郑芝龙呢把这些个力量集合起来，然后郑芝龙跟明朝官方合作，官方曾经也是要剿他，但是剿不了，最后呢就是双方的在博弈中妥协了，妥协以后合作。
Zheng Zhilong's ships became, in effect, part of the emperor's navy and took on the Dutch East India Company's fleet. as well as a large fleet of pirates with more than 200 ships. Zheng beat them in a single battle, and from that time on was the most powerful maritime force in the region.
郑氏海商集团实际上是独霸远东海上，这是明朝中国跟太平洋的关系，对吧？明朝有2政，那么前面呢是官方主体的海上力量，后面是海商为主体的海上力量。
Although Zheng fought in the name of the Ming Emperor, he couldn't save the dynasty. A new dynasty was to open up trade again, and Chinese citizens would spread throughout the region, across the seas. When the Ming Dynasty fell, it was replaced by another, the Qing, put in place by the Manchurian conquerors from the north. Zheng Zhilong, the naval commander, swapped sides and supported the Qing leadership. But his son, Zheng Chenggong, refused to bow to the new emperor, and so as punishment, his father was captured and executed. At this time, the younger Zheng was entrenched in Formosa, now known as Taiwan. He expelled the Dutch East India Company from the island. Zheng Chenggong died just 2 years after taking Taiwan. He was widely seen as a hero who had freed the island from colonialism.
郑成功这个系统是台湾自己产生的英烈王爷，可以讲说是台湾本地的神。那么他因为一直守护台湾的这个百姓，所以呢，台湾人尊他为神，而且称他为开台圣王。
This simple temple is dedicated to him.
这个是一个泉州的宅院建筑的形式，它基本上是一个宅院的形式，所以它前面的建筑有一个凹受，进去有个门厅，然后进去是天井，那是大厅。那这一个很典型的泉州的式的建筑物。
After his death, Zheng Chenggong's own son carried on the resistance against the new Qing rulers. But in the end, a Qing fleet invaded and established their rule here as well. This Taiwanese burial ground holds the graves of many pioneering immigrants from southern China. The connections between Taiwan and Quanzhou were strong, and many immigrants came to the island to seek their fortune. All the more, once Zheng had expelled the Dutch East India Company.
郑成功在台湾过世之后呢，是民间建庙，私下祭拜。一直到同治13年沈葆桢来台湾，发现郑成功保护台湾人，使大家安居乐业，所以呢就奏请朝廷给他建延平郡王祠。所以清朝盖的延平郡王祠上面就写明延平郡王祠，很特别。清朝统治212年之中台湾处在一个扩张、竞争、开垦、兼并这样的过程中所以很多人他需要信仰。那郑成功在很多方面他提供了这样的信仰的需求，满足了大家心里的祈愿
With the fall of the Ming Dynasty, the ban on maritime trade was loosened and ultimately dropped. The people of Quanzhou could take to the seas again.
大量的移民就是从郑和下江之后就开始了， 这个时候，海外的移民从这个福建出去就非常多。
One of their destinations was the Philippines, at that time a Spanish colony. Spying an opportunity, many Chinese came here to work and trade, and by the 19th century, there were nearly 1 million of them here. Wilson Lee Flores' ancestors came here from Quanzhou in the 18th century.
我们的祖先呢，很多华人来东南亚没有想要住的，不是想要移民的。我们的祖先普通来这里工作，或是做小生意，普通要回去家乡的。是祖先回去结婚、生孩子，回来生一代一代就是这样。那个时候西班牙时代来菲律宾的都是男人，没有家庭的，没有太太，全部都是男人来这里做工作。如果没有回去就跟本地人结婚，或是有家庭的，没有办法回去的，这些都是华裔。
Intramuros is the heart of the old colonial Spanish settlement in Manila. The Spaniards were distrustful of the Chinese immigrants who had arrived in such numbers and kept the cannon in the fort directed at their district. And still they prospered. The Spanish had arrived in Manila in the 15th century, and as the city grew and became more prosperous, more Chinese people arrived from Quanzhou and the coast of southern Fujian province. Coming to Manila could be very profitable. 1/3 of the world's silver passed through Manila and into China, and silk and porcelain flowed in the other direction, to Manila, and from there to Spain and its other colonies in the Americas.
所谓的马尼拉大帆船，就是整个的大三角贸易，主要的呢就是这个马尼拉到墨西哥的阿卡普尔科，然后就回西班牙。那个时代吧，就已经是有很多的，而且对于这个主要是东南亚这一带的一些国家的建设是起伏不大不错。那么这些人其实都是从事海上贸易的。这是与泉州这个地区都是有非常重要的关系。
Continuing the entrepreneurial tradition, Wilson bought a traditional bakery. But the life of a businessman is rarely easy.
这个是1939年开始的，是菲律宾最传统的面包店。这个是2月的时候。我们旁边有一个酒吧，它火烧的时候12点晚上，后面有一个办公室就火烧就把我们这个全部就烧了。
Wilson lost most of his $2 million investment. Undeterred, he's determined to make his bakery a success.
旁边那个人他是租的，自己没有保险，所以我很生气，也没有办法。我就想没有的，我就自己找办法，自己要再盖的，损失很大，但是我还要做。
Wilson feels his battling spirit comes from his Quanzhou ancestors.
我是比较 optimist， 我们中国人的祖先太聪明了，他找这个字危机应该有想好了，说每个危机有危险，有好的机会，所以我想这个什么机会？这机会是要盖更大一点，希望更新一点，更有效率一点。
The Chinese presence in Manila has left its mark everywhere. Spain and the Philippines are strongly Catholic nations. But the Church of San Agustin, in the heart of Intramuros, is guarded, like many a temple, by Chinese lions.
这个是叫做 San Agustin 教堂，是 菲律宾最古老、最有历史的天主教教堂。华人在菲律宾有几千年的，1000、2000年的历史了。在菲律宾社会菲律宾的经济、菲律宾做事情，大部分都是华人做的，所以盖这个教堂也是华人贡献最大的。华人做的时候问西班牙人，这个是要盖什么？他说这个是宗教的地方，所以华人你看，这个是只有华人、只有中国的文化才有的。你看，中国的那个麒麟，全世界的天主教堂有可能是只有这个有麒麟，没有别的地方。
Chinese influence reaches further afield. Venice is the home of the 13th century traveler Marco Polo. His written account may have been exaggerated, but it certainly brought one thing to people's attention: that there was wealth, opportunity, and civilization outside Europe as well. One of China's most typical products, and some might say one of its most cultured, is tea. Tea from Quanzhou is now reaching Marco Polo's city on the water. Ardita, a student here in Venice, is learning about the skills, practices, and culture behind the Chinese Gongfu tea ceremony, which originated in southern Fujian, around Quanzhou. It's all about the details, which have to be precise and elegant. She wants to pass this knowledge on to other international students in her tea club.
Allora, all'inizio della cultura cinese conoscevo poco, poi ho scoperto appunto il tè e tutta la cultura della cerimonia che vi sta dietro, quindi ho iniziato a capire quali sono i rituali e come si beve esattamente il tè per gustarlo meglio, e quindi mi sono avvicinata a questa cultura e ho iniziato a studiarne la lingua per poi appunto imparare anche a fare la cerimonia. Perché metti il tè qua dentro e poi appunto con il coperchio cerchi di non far cadere la foglia. A mettere dentro il tè che si beve.
For Ardita's tea club, it's a new experience of Chinese culture. Slowing down, savoring the taste, enjoying all the precise rituals. While not every lover of Chinese tea goes to the extreme of learning the Gongfu ceremony, tea is certainly one of China's products that has spread around the world. Tea from Fujian in particular is very popular. The tea Ardita is using for today's ceremony is a classic China tea, and it was produced in the countryside around Quanzhou. Tieguanyin tea is considered one of the most refined teas in China. Grown in the hills around Quanzhou, it is harvested twice a year, in spring and in autumn, both sweet, but with the autumn harvest presenting a stronger aroma.
别人一年可以采这个3季4季，我这边呢只采2季，春茶跟秋茶。因为我们高山产量少，然后我们这个确保它的生养生息得到保障，营养充足啊，所以出来的茶这边特别甘甜。
Wu Rongshan is supervising the tea picking, something that can only be done by hand for a quality tea. The pickers have to select the best leaves.
是的，我们那个这一片都是给意大利的，那
对这边的。
今年出去多少了？
今年春茶都已经供货，保证的这个供货300斤了。
今天能产多少啊？今天
看这个今天这个天气，估计采200斤青没问题的。
200斤，那也才40-50斤啊。
对。
采黄还要精加工、烘焙，这个任务还比较重，时间赶哦。
Tie Guanyin is an oolong tea. It's partially fermented, so it falls between green and black tea. It's roasted gently over a charcoal fire, which gives it its unique flavor. Before it can be released to the customer, the tea has to be tasted. This is one of the most critical steps. For each batch, the tasters comment on flavor and aroma and adjust the process accordingly. Above all, processing the tea takes time, from planting all the way to the teapot. It's said that here in southern Fujian, the enjoyment of tea has reached its most refined.
我觉得就像一泡茶，我们越喝是越有灵感的，越喝是越有生命的。我们彼此之间的，人跟人或者国家跟国家之间，我觉得茶一泡一喝，彼此心灵就打开了，就什么话都能够沟通，是很好的一种生活方式。
For over 1,000 years, Chinese trade was centered around goods closely bound up with Chinese culture. Silk, tea, and porcelain. These wares made their way into the world by sea from the trading hub of Quanzhou, just as Chinese goods still do today. The port that greeted the ancient navigators and traders from Europe, Zai Tun, is still open, still trading, still connecting China to the world.
从《山海经》里面“闽在海中”这4个字，就给福建、给泉州的地域文化涂上了蔚蓝色的这个符号。
15世纪初，中国建构了一个印度洋的国际体系。
虽然它也是贸易之道，但是它也是文化艺术的传播之路。
多元文化，这个就是共生在海上丝绸之路上，对吧？所以这个泉州就是一个最好的例证。
Today, the erythrina that gave the city its name still flowers around its city walls. Times have changed, but Quanzhou remains open and outward-looking, a place where China and the outside world meet in the search for peace and prosperity, a city of light.